The hard part about Fiverr and like Upwork and stuff like that is it is a race to the bottom of the barrel.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Beyond the Manuscript. As always, I am your host, Cooper Anderson, and before we get into it, I just want to say that Beyond the Manuscript is now available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. So, if you like what I do here, please, for me, hit that like, subscribe, follow, all of the buttons. It really helps out the channel. Okay, now let's get into it. My guest today is a revisions editor here at Manuscript. She is the co-founder of Book Realm Revisions. She is an editor and world builder at Eldergate Publishing. She is also currently a freelance editor with Wizards of the Coast, currently working on Magic the Gathering. You can check out her work at bookrealmrevisions.com. Please welcome my guest today, Heather Romanowski.
Hi, Cooper. It's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too, Heather. Yeah, this is our first time actually interacting together. This is really fun. Cool. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it here. So first things first, can you tell us a little bit about Book Realm Revisions and everything that you do there?
So I am the co-founder. My partner is the CFO. He checks all of the quotes that go out, and he's also my salesperson. So when we go to conventions, he, goes and breaks the ice with certain people, and I'm breaking the ice with other people, and we have, conversations. I am the editor in chief. I work on all of our, publishing contracts, all of our self-publishing contracts with our authors, and I also have some business contracts that I work on. So I do most of the editing portion while my partner does everything kind of in the background. He has had to step in on a couple cases to just, kind of smooth over ruffle feathers, but that doesn't happen that often. Sometimes you need to have, a united front on the company side. So, but most of the time, everything goes extremely well, and we've been growing. So year over year, we've had steady growth, and it's been the best.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm always interested in just the freelance world or the freelance side of publishing because of how publishing has changed over the last couple of decades. People can now actually afford to do this where, okay, we're going to set up our own company. We're going to start building our own clientele. We're really going to start building our own where you don't have to rely on the bigger publishers for any kind of work. You can actually just go out and do it yourself. So my next question is, what does someone need in order to get started in the freelance editing business?
So the main thing that I would say, because I started off 6 years ago, the first thing I did was I took a couple editing tests, because even though I have my degree in writing and rhetoric with a minor in business, I still wanted to go and check my editing skills, because it's been a while since I had to use all of the items in my toolbox. So I went and got a certificate with Poynter University through ACES, the Society of Editing. And then I actually started taking the copy editing courses through the EFA, or the Editorial Freelancers Association. I'm a member of both organizations. They both offer a lot of opportunities. The EFA and ACES both have tracks for how to get into editing. I will say ACES does have a lot of journalist style editing, but they also have like a wide range of freelance stuff. So both organizations offer conferences every single year, which are really, really great ways to like go and learn. And I know that me and a lot of my fellow freelancers, go to both conferences and work through. We take all the classes, and I've even seen some of my fellow freelancers start teaching their own classes on kind of niche topics that they are passionate about and are very, very good at. So that's always fun too.
My next question is, how do you determine what projects you want to take on as a freelance editor?
First is personality. I do a interview with each of my clients, because the main thing is I am a collaborator. I am not going to just red pen your whole manuscript. That's not the point. I want to collaborate to help make this closer to the vision that you have in your head, which means our personalities need to mesh. One of the reasons why I am a freelance editor is because I get to choose the genres. So I specialize in science fiction and fantasy, but that doesn't mean I don't take on nonfiction or romance genres. I've done that too because I find passions in it. It's based on a kind of project basis. And then the second main thing is, okay, what is your deadline and budget? So I do, I try to work within budgets, but I also have to, keep a roof over my head and food on the table. So I have to have a living wage, but I do try to work through like, here are options. Here are services that, this is what I see based on my sample edit. So I'll do a review. You get to see what my style of editing is, and the client can walk away, at that point, no problem. Like everything up until we sign the contract is a free consult. It is you getting to know me. It's me getting to know you. For the most part, this has worked out the best. I've only had a couple clients walk away, and that is because my booking schedule isn't open to them, or they just don't have the budget for what I have. But I've had several say, one day I want to work with you, but right now I just can't afford that. I'm like, that's perfectly fine. I look forward to the day that I get to work with you as well, because you are a really awesome human to talk to. So I get to meet a lot of very interesting people.
I bet. As a side question to this, because I'm just thinking about really kind of getting started for people. What's your opinion on websites like Fiverr, where like, hey, these are, tiny little editing jobs just to get experience in?
I say it is good. The hard part about Fiverr and like Upwork and stuff like that is it is a race to the bottom of the barrel. So when you are starting out, that is fine. You can take those small jobs. I took small jobs. I took some very small jobs. My partner, when they really got into helping me reevaluate what my rates were, was like, do I even want to know what you charged for your first couple projects? I'm like, no, you don't. You don't. Because at the time, I had a full-time corporate job. So this was a side business that was supposed to eventually become my full-time job. I'm actually 5 years early on what my projected, take this full-time was. So I'm already ahead of my personal, like what my personal forecast is. And it was to the point where like, I couldn't, I'm like, I have to give up sleep, or I have to give up one of my jobs. And I'm like, I guess I'm giving up my corporate job because I'm not moving forward in that way. And I'm going to take this freelance thing, full forward. So yes, do the Fiverr, but keep in mind that that is temporary. And that you do need to reevaluate your quotes, what your, once you build up that portfolio, once you start building up skills, because I will say I took small jobs in order to purchase classes so that I could hone my skills, so I could attend conventions, so I could learn more. And then once I reached a point like I am kind of worth something, which I'll be honest was when I passed the Wizards editing test. I was like, oh, okay. And then they're like, here is our rates. And I'm like, these are magical. And that really made me evaluate what my worth was and start, looking at my quotes. And then now a couple years later, I'm like, okay, I actually have to accommodate for inflation and the cost, just the general rising cost of living. So I actually talked to my accountant because I do have a CPA because I refuse to screw up my taxes in any way, shape, or form. And I talked to him like, okay, how do you manage this for your business? And he said, well, we have a general flat rate that we increase our costs by every single year over year. That way it accommodates for rising costs and ensures that, our clients don't suddenly get hit with a huge jump and they're unhappy with it. So I've decided to incorporate that into my own structure moving forward. And that's something that I recommend for all, people who start out, those who are mid, is you really do need to evaluate your quotes as you go on and really think about, okay, this is all the stuff that I've learned. What does this translate to in value for my clients and for myself? I can do stuff faster now. I've learned new techniques. So just Yes, you can do Fiverr, you can do Upwork. Just make sure that you don't stay at those like at the bottom of the barrel forever. I'd say
How
maybe a
often?
year, maybe two, depending on how many you do, but make sure you actually start to raise your living wages, which the Editorial Freelancers Association does have a rate chart that helps you figure out what the living wage is, because it is a member chart that they send out to all of their members, and we all send in like what we do and what our quotes are.
Good. You just answered my next question immediately. That was
Yeah.
great. That was good. Awesome. So, getting into the actual more nitty gritty of editing
Mhm.
itself, what are some common early mistakes that you see from early writers?
So the biggest thing, and it's actually something that I started specializing in, is show versus tell, which is extremely hard as a concept to understand when you're a beginning writer, because you're just trying to get it from your brain onto the paper or in your computer. You're just trying to get it down. So
Mm-hmm.
this isn't something that I say that you want to worry about your first draft. You just want to get the story. Show versus tell is something that comes in revisions, and it is the ability to change it from a cardboard cutout type of like character moving through a story to you're actually experiencing the story. It's the part where it changes from I'm reading something on a page to I'm living in the book. So it's taking in like, how do you react? It's the how do you watch other characters react? So it's the facial expressions, it's the emotions, and there are some really great resources out there. First is the Emotion Thesaurus, which you can find at onestopshopforwriters.com. Highly recommend it. They have a free trial for 2 weeks. It makes things so much easier, and they have a whole range of books. That's the first thing I recommend. The second is Janice Hardy is a fiction author and editor, and she actually has a book called Show versus Tell, like actually understanding and getting it. It's really thin, it's skinny, and all of her books are jam-packed front to back with advice. There's no fluff. There's no fluff. And it really helps you key in onto the words. It helps you key into the phrasing and pinpointing it within your own writing on what is show versus tell. And then the second is character arcs. A character is supposed to change throughout a story typically, unless it is like very episodic, which would be something like Sherlock Holmes, or certain stories where it's like the same character. Like a lot of mystery books do this, where the same character
Yeah.
starting at the beginning, they may learn stuff, but they don't necessarily take that into the second book. That's very episodic. But in reality, there's this growing trend towards this bigger narrative arc where we want to see, feel, and experience the story so we can relate to it. And then in the second book, we don't want to start at square one. We want them to have learned from book one and moved forward. And so they're taking those lessons and they're going to come up with new variations that they have to like change the stuff that they just learned, or they're learning new things. So the hardest part is making sure you get all those kind of points in. And again, that's not something you do in the first draft. That's something that you work on in later drafts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that most new writers don't necessarily understand is that the first draft is your messiest draft. It does not have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Don't spend forever on it. The main thing is you're probably going to rewrite that thing at least 5 times.
One of my favorite quotes, I cannot, off the top of my head, I can't remember who said this, but basically it was saying the first draft is just you telling yourself the story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. You are telling yourself the story. You're trying to get all the pieces down. And then only then are you able to actually like go and refine it and make it better. So
then you can make it look like you knew what you were doing the whole time.
Well, you knew what you're doing the whole time. I think actually Neil Gaiman even said that, it's in revisions that he actually realizes that he knew what he was doing all along, but he just had to like tell himself 5 times how to do it. So yeah, there's it's the hardest part is you want it to be perfect because you want someone else to read it to tell you what they think of it. Like, was it worth the 100 hours that you spent drafting, researching, trying to get all of this? Like, you want to do that, but at the same time, like, it's okay if it's not perfect. You just have to make sure that the person that you hand it to knows that it's not perfect, and that they shouldn't expect like all your I's dotted perfectly, all your T's, all your commas in the right place, you have all your punctuation perfect. Yeah, like that's later. That's polishing. That's copy editing. So
Cool. What would you say is the hardest advice to swallow for writers?
oh gosh. It doesn't matter if you're a new author or an older author. The hardest part is beta reading.
Yeah.
And the biggest piece of advice that I give to all my authors in manuscripts and all my authors in general, especially when they go out to beta readers, is there's two things. First, time honored proverb, don't have too many cooks in the kitchen. It's still your kitchen. So when you are picking beta readers, pick people with intent. So like if you're doing a nonfiction, some of your beta readers will be, your ideal audience, and others will be subject matter experts to catch you on either science or whatever topic to make sure that you're accurate and you sound like you know what you're doing. For fantasy, it's you want to have a mixture of people who love fantasy and who are invested in the type of story that you're writing, but you also kind of want to have a mix of people who are interested in your story. Like you can have like your mom and your dad like do that, but also remember like they're going to tell you that you did well, or I don't know. My mother was always my first editor. She always told me what I needed to improve upon. So just know that like the people that you love are the ones that are, also have like the biggest ability to hurt you sometimes.
Yeah.
And then the second piece of advice is it's your story. You have to kind of step back from the beta reading, all the feedback. You want to ask direct questions. You don't want to just say, hey, please read my book. Tell me what you think. You want to ask direct questions about like, okay, what do you feel about this character? What do you feel about the beginning, the middle, the end? Was there any part that was slow? Was there any part that didn't seem like it worked out? Like all of, you want to ask direct questions. And then you want to sit back from that feedback after ingesting it and be like, does this move my story in the direction of that I want it to go? Or does it, move it in a completely different direction that isn't, the heart of my story? And you really need to assess that because you're not going to take all of the advice. And that is the hardest part because you're scared of giving your story out to somebody, but you also really want the feedback and you want good feedback. So it is a very hard process for a lot of authors. And even me, if I write something and I hand it out to somebody, like I'm sweating too. And I'm like, I've been reading, writing, and editing for over a decade now. And I still like everyone gets the jitters about it. It gets a little easier. It's just the stakes kind of rise as you go along too.
Another big piece of especially beta reader advice that I've gotten is that if multiple people tell you there's like a problem in a book, they're usually correct. And whenever they tell you how to fix it, they're usually wrong. All right. So apart from working here at Manuscripts, you were also an editor at Wizards of the Coast. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience there?
I have a phenomenal team. So I am one of the freelance editors. There's two of us. And there is a whole like internal team. They have a lore editor. They kind of have the main story lead. And so I get this chance to work with a whole bunch of authors. Some are New York Times bestselling authors. Some are self-published authors. I get to work with this wide variety of just talent. And there's like kind of two facets to what I do there. The first is developmental editing, which means that I get to see the first draft. Now, we say it's internally first draft. Who knows how many times the author like rewrote that before they submitted it. And so they are brought on for a particular card set or lore. Some like we've had, Neon Kamigawa, which is all like cyberpunk and like, Japanese and Asian style like characters. So we actually brought on Akimi, and I'm sorry if I said that wrong, if I said her name wrong. because I've only ever seen it written, but she, you know, that is one of her specialties. So I love the fact that we actually are trying to bring on authors that specialize in a particular like lore or setting or even like a genre. There's a couple like really cool things coming out that I can't talk about, but you know, I'm really excited for it. Like the Phyrexian arc, which we just finished, which was March of the Machine. We brought in all these different authors and pieces. We brought all these different pieces of worlds. And then we basically set a, you know, if you took the Borg and the Daleks and you kind of made them so that they could go to all the different planets instantaneously.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you made it so that it was so easy for them to convert you that you may not actually know that you were one of their agents until it was too late.
Oh no. So that's
Because
even
they
a
can make
little
you
bit
forget.
of yeah, that's even a little bit of Battlestar Galactica. Is that the one where they had where you don't know that you're one of these synthetic humans from
Yep.
I cannot remember the whole thing, but
Yeah.
that's really cool.
So it was like a whole bunch of betrayals all at once. Like it was so like heart-wrenching, and like I was so invested in it. Like that's I think the best part about it. And then the line editing aspect of it is you've gone through the developmental editing. Now it's the cleanup and making sure that like we are sticking to the internal style guide, and that, you know, everything, like all of the feedback from our sensitivity consultants and all the other, like it was all like done. And then like checking the grammar. So those are kind of the two facets. And if you do developmental editing on one side, typically you aren't doing the line editing. It's my partner who's doing it. So
Gotcha. Okay.
So I've also seen them be like, oh, this is an awesome scene. We're going to request a card from this scene. So I've actually seen cards that weren't originally part of the sets, like planned out, be added to the set based off of how amazing an author wrote something.
Very cool. So my next question is, what is it like working on such a well-known and popular IP? Do you just feel like the hundreds of thousands of people just staring over your shoulder, but like,
Sometimes.
don't mess up? Is that what it's like, or is it? Tell me about it.
So I actually met my husband playing Magic the Gathering. So I am kind of part of the fandom, but I will say that up until that point, I hadn't read any of the lore. So when I passed the test, I was like, okay, I have a lot of homework to do. That was the first thing. And I will say that my team is so good. Like that's the reason why we have a lore keeper. Their job is specifically to make sure that we are sticking close to everything that's been published behind us, making sure that we're taking care with all of that and we're not like smashing something that for no good reason. Because we smash things, and new characters come and old characters die, and it's heart-wrenching. I was like, wait, no. So we've also had characters go through, like, once March of the Machine was over, some characters are forever changed because they did, spoiler alert, they did figure out how to change them back, but there was a price for it, a very hefty price. And so now these characters who are originally heroes are forever changed by their experience of the fact that they were the villains and they can see what they did. So imagine little demigods. So basically imagine the Avengers being changed against their will and then, you know, just being told to do destruction on their home planets. And then coming out of that and seeing exactly what they did and understanding it, because when they were under the, you know, basically when they were Phyrexian, they didn't care. And now all of like they're kind of back, their bodies are there, their emotions are back, and they're just like, I did all of this. And now we're seeing that aftermath of that kind of like the trauma of that. So like that's cool to be able to like, because now that's the character arc stuff where you're just like, okay, now we have this, and now what do? We have to we're actually showing them struggling through this and coming to terms with it for good or for ill, based off of, you know, how humans take this and deal with it. So there is a lot. We do take a lot of time to really consider what the fans want. But we also steer the story based off of how the story is going to be steered. But we do take time to make sure that we're not, as I said, breaking something that, doesn't need to be broken. Like we're not gonna like kill a character off for no good reason. Because that character's been beloved, it's been there for decades. Like we're just not going to do that. So there's generally a reason for it.
Yeah, you have to walk that very specific balancing act of like, okay, we can't ruin the thing that everyone loves, but also you have to remember a lot of people don't know that they want something until they get a really, really good thing, right? And so it's this weird kind of balance you got to figure out when they're making anything, really.
And there is discussions, but after the story is released, there are discussions based off of like, because they do watch the community and we talk about it. So we do keep in mind, like we do check what everyone's doing, and we kind of get like, here's our good feedback. For the most part, everything that I've worked on, like the anger has been, justified. And it's not really like anger, like you totally ruined this. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened type of like outburst. But like in general, like they understand where we're going with it. And it's not like we're kind of hitting them with something. They're just like, well, why did you do that? Like that doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of the important thing, is like, if they're mad we killed off character for one reason or another, like the sacrifice that that character made, they do see that it's worth it. So that's the important part, is there's hundreds, thousands, millions of fans, and they all have opinions, and when I'm in the editing process, I try very hard not to think about it because there's a lot of pressure for that.
All right, well, Heather, we are slowly running out of time here. Where can people find your stuff?
So I am on, I have my website, bookrealmrevisions.com. I'm also on Instagram, also at bookrealmrevisions. And I do have a Twitter. It's Heather R Edits. And then I have a Bluesky, which I cannot remember if it's Heather R Edits or Book Realm Revisions. I probably try to keep it I tried to put everything to Book Realm Revisions, so it might be that. But
I'll put a link of that in the description down below.
Yep. Well, I'll send you all of it, and I'll make sure I have the correct Bluesky there, because that's the new kind of one we're going to. So you can send me. I have 2 email forms. I have a general contact form, so you don't have to fill out the giant editing form just to say hi. But you can also just DM me on Instagram. I do have my DMs open, so anyone who wants to ask questions, they can.
All right. One more time, I want to thank Heather Romanowski for joining me today here at Beyond the Manuscript, which is, of course, powered by Manuscripts, where you never write alone. All right, Heather, thank you one more time for joining us. I wish you the best of luck with everything.
You as well. Take care.